once you understand the metrics that you need to use to analyze a smaller deal, once you understand how to operate a smaller deal, generally speaking, there's huge economies of scale by taking that same work and applying it to a larger project.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where I, Kyle, from Kyle Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? This week's guest on the show is incredibly inspiring and making large strides in the real estate investing world. Ryan is an impressive local investor with an awesome story. In the final part of this two-part interview, we get a chance to chat about more sweet topics. In this episode, we chat about how important it is to learn from your failures, maintaining forward progress, economies of scale, and so much more. This interview was a ton of fun, and I hope you enjoy. Let's jump right into the episode.
And then from there, I had a falling out with my business partner early last year in 2021. That's when we went our separate ways. He kept his property and then just sold it, and I just kept my property in Worcester. But I knew I wanted to get into the commercial multifamily space. So we were doing 1 to 4 units. That's residential. Generally speaking, the way you value that is based off of comparable analysis approach, comparable approach. So anything in the market that's very similar that's sold, that's going to help you gauge what the value of your building is worth. So if there's an identical building across the street, even if it might be making a little bit more in rents, even if, you're just saying, so to speak, if it's just more profitable property, but it's 1 to 4 units, it doesn't really matter. If there's an identical property across the street that just sold for $700,000 and your property's, generally speaking, probably going to be worth $700,000. It's a little bit of an extreme, but even if it made $1 million a year in income, in theory, nobody should be willing to pay more than $700,000 for that. Or generally speaking, the market's not going to. Now, the market's not always perfect. It doesn't always behave rational, so those things to consider. 5+ units, though, commercial multifamily space, generally speaking, the way that those are valued is based off the income approach. So the amount of income you make on the property increases the value of it to the bank, to the next investor, to the next buyer. So if you have a property and you buy it under the assumption that it's only making $20,000 a year in income, and through expert management or through your own, cost-saving strategies or revenue-generating implementations, if you can boost the revenue, you can lower the expenses, you're going to overall boost the net income, and boosting the net income overall will raise the value of the property. So that's what I talk about when I say forcing appreciation. There's a little bit more control there. We can control the value of it by being better business operators than the last owner. And that's what I wanted to do. So 2021 came around and I'm like, okay, I'm having this falling out with my business partner, but I knew I wanted to buy something in the commercial multifamily space. I just really loved it. And the way that those loans are processed too is a little easier. They're not as stringent on your credit worthiness, and they still care, but it's not like everything at the end of the day. They don't necessarily care about your income that much. They really want to just make sure that the property itself is going to be a good little business, and it's going to be able to sustain itself, and it's going to be able to pay the mortgage. It's going to be able to pay all of its expenses. That's what the bank wants to see. They want to know that if we have to take over this property, we want to know that it is going to be a good little business, that it'll be able to sustain itself, or that, at least for you guys, you're not going to put yourselves in a situation as the borrowers where you're going to stretch yourselves too thin. So I was like, how am I going to do this? Because I was like, I don't have experience doing this. And I was like, I felt really bummed out that my partnership had failed, or my first partnership had kind of failed, or we had a disagreement, went our own separate ways. So then I was like, I need to start going back to networking events. I'd only been to a couple at that point. I actually think I met Ricky at my very first networking event. I think he was at a networking event in Assembly Row. I believe it was this gentleman.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was, and I had watched him. I don't know what podcast on Biggerpockets that you were watching when you said that you mentioned him, but I believe he was one of the earlier ones, from the first few years. Definitely. And that was the one I think I'd heard. And I was like, oh, that's cool. He's a awesome local guy. And I was looking for some real estate networking events locally. So I started going to those. Then I found the Pints of Properties ones. Pints of Properties where it changed everything. Pints of Properties just had a lot of people who were in this very similar situation where they're just starting out, or they're semi-experienced investors, but they're not I own thousands of units type of investor. Yeah. And that's where I met one of my business partners now, Matt Davis. I think you've actually had him on the show before. And he and I were talking, and I heard that one of his first deals was actually buying a 6-family, which I was impressed with. He's a younger guy, he's a few years younger than me. It was one of his first properties that he bought. Like, that's really cool. That's actually pretty impressive. That's one of your first properties. So I started talking with him a little bit more. He met another gentleman named John Marchese, who's a contractor at another Prince of Properties event. So then Matt's like, hey, let's do a mastermind together. Or would you guys be open to that? I was like, yeah, that actually would be really good. And so then we started doing the mastermind. And that was really just to set goals each week. One of my goals was finding a house hack. Even though I had done 2 FHAs in Worcester, I wanted to come to this area, to the eastern Massachusetts, more closer to Boston. And I wanted to find something that I could live with myself. And I wanted to do a rehab construction loan because I had heard about the 203K. I wanted to get some rehab experience, some extensive rehab experience. And same thing like the FHA, you can leverage you can use this product to be highly leveraged even with the rehab. So you can come in with 3.5% down net, 3.5% of the purchase price and 3.5% of the rehab costs. So I started looking here. It was a lot harder to make the cash flow work because the banks still want to see that they're going to pass certain tests and that they're going to meet certain metrics and ratios. That was a little difficult for me, but I did end up finding a property in Medford. But anyway, that's how we came together. And that was one of the goals earlier that I'm setting was how are we going to find, what are my goals? What am I going to tell them my goals are? What are the things I'm going to do each week? So at that time, I started experimenting with some direct mail, off letters, trying to get some 2, 3, 4 families in Somerville, Medford, Cambridge. And I eventually found something, but it wasn't through a letter. It's actually through a guy who was for sale by owner on Craigslist. And he wanted way too much money for his property. But I kept in contact with him and I kind of kept at it every few weeks, every month I'd reach out to him. And after 6 months, he came around and he sold it to me. So that's what I'm working on right now. And that's the project that I've been working on. That's been taking up most of my time is just making sure that progress is being made in that 3-family rehab that I'm doing, which if you follow me on social media, and if you do, Kyle, you'll see that I've been posting about that a lot because I think it's a really cool loan product. The FHA 203K loan product is really cool. They have a skinny version and then they have the kind of larger version. The skinny version, I think, is like less than 35,000 or less than 30,000 in rehab. Rehab costs. And then if you do more than 35,000, then you gotta go with the regular 203K. And mine was more than that. I think mine came out to like 150,000. And plus I made some scope of work changes afterwards. So it's probably closer to like 175,000 now. I unfortunately couldn't make it work where I could put down 3.5%. I did have to come out with a little bit more out of pocket. So I think I'm like about 7% into this out of pocket, maybe even closer to 10 now. I have to look back at the books to figure that out. But it still seems like it's a good investment. I'm really excited. We're almost at the point where these units are going to be rent ready, the bottom 2 units at least, and I'm going to be living in the top floor. And I hope I'm going to be able to report it's a raging success. I was hoping everything was going to be done by this podcast, actually. We are behind right now. So everything was supposed to be done by the end of June. It might be. Everything was supposed to be done by the end of June. And so when I originally booked this podcast show with you, I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll probably go talk about the end of the rehab work. But it's still going on, but it is very close. I'm in there. And it's like the floors are getting refinished. The painting's almost completely done. The last things that need to happen are just cleaning the floors, some small electrical things, changing out some lighting fixtures. So we're almost there. I'm excited. I've hired a realtor to scope out. She's a good friend of my sister's, and she's got rental real estate experience, so she's doing that. She lives right down the street from the property, so it just seemed like a good fit. So she's helping me find some tenants for it. And in this market, like I'm sure many, the tenants generally speaking, are paying for the broker fee out of pocket. So in the Boston market, it's very common for agents to get charged a broker fee for them helping find you a property, and it'll be the tenants that'll pay the broker fee. So it's nice for the landlord because you can get a tenant that's paying first, last, and security and a broker fee. You get your first, last, security. The broker gets paid by the applicant, by the tenant, and so you don't have to pay it out of pocket in theory. And then with the team, with me, Matt, and John, and Blue Canyon Equity, we use this off-market direct mail campaign that I was using from when I was looking for a house hack to do for myself starting last year. And I just kind of transitioned that into the types of properties that we said that we were thinking of looking for. So late last year, right around the time I was also looking at this 3-family in Medford, where I started talking to the gentleman about it. Almost exactly the same time, we started sending out letters as a group. At the time, we hadn't called ourselves Blue Canyon. We hadn't come up with that name yet, but we were sending out letters. We were very seriously interested in investing together. And it wasn't until December where something actually stuck. And then there was a couple hurdles to get over, a couple of obstacles that we needed to figure out. But we did figure them out, and we were able to close on the first property in March, and now we're closing on the second property today. So that's where we are. I mean, and my goal for this year, I think, was to do one house hack on my own, one FHA house hack, buy my own house, my own multifamily, It was to buy 3 properties with these gentlemen, the Blue Canyon Group. So I'm 2/3 of the way there on that. And then I also want to invest in a property with my sister. So that was another goal I have because she's very interested in real estate as well. And so that's something I still need to do with her. But other than that, I think it's going well. I'm very happy with the goals that I've been achieving and the progress that I've made. But in a lot of ways, I'm my own worst critic. I don't know if you ever find yourself, Kyle, doing the same thing where you're like, yeah, if the person that I was like 3 years ago met somebody like me today, I'm probably would be impressed. Oh, you own a few properties, you've done a rehab, buying larger stuff. That's really cool. That seems really impressive. But now I am where I am today, and I'm like, yeah, it's not good enough. I want to be bigger. I want to be better. I want to do more, which is good. I think it's good to have those types of ambitions. Don't be too hard on yourself, of course. I'm trying not to be too hard on myself, but this is where I am. This is where I am at life right now. And I think of Blue Canyon and my partners as being a great way for us to take on bigger projects together and take on things that might be a little bit more risky for me to do on my own, especially if there's like a rehab component and I'm not as familiar with it. One of our partners is a contractor, one of them is an engineer. I have a kind of finance and accounting background. So I think we balance each other well. And because there's 3 of us, it's very easy to come to conclusions on things because you just put it up to a vote and there's always a majority.
That's a really good point.
Yes. So that's another piece of advice. If you get into a partnership and it's a 50-50 split, or it could be a 50-50 split with the voting, I highly recommend you have some process in place where somebody gets to decide to vote on it.
Wow.
That's a good piece of advice there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow.
And that's a new mindset I had. It's awesome that I try to think of it like it sucks when you fail. I think everybody agrees on that. But you got to learn from your failures. That sounds so trite too, I know. But like you have to learn from your failures. And I think that in a funny way, the universe like has you learn a lesson that you can implement almost immediately somewhere else. And it was like with that first partnership, I learned what worked, I learned what didn't work, and I was able to implement that and come to this partnership with such a strong foundational mindset, like a good value system for how to work in a partnership.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful. And I find that similar things like that happening in other parts of my life right now, where it's a lesson I learned 2 months ago is really coming in handy today. And so it's really cool. I think it's really awesome when you can say like, wow, I remember learning this lesson just not too far back. And now here I am being able to implement and approach it a different way so that I can increase my chances of success moving forward. But I've been talking for a while. I'm going to take a sip of water. I don't know if you have a question.
No, that's extremely impressive, man. And there's a couple of things that I do want to hit on in there. Was like the thing too about like being your own worst critic. Like I'm glad you said that because like that's something that I'm really trying to figure out because I feel like it's almost like kind of striking a balance because on one side, to your point, you know, like actually I had a conversation with a guy who was on the podcast a while back. Shout out to Riley Knox. I hope you're doing well, man. But there was a conversation that him and I had, and he mentioned, you know, we were talking about something along this kind of vein. And he was like, dude, he's like, you know, if you met yourself from 5 years ago, or like, you know, picture yourself like when you're, you know, 5 and 10 years ago, you know, is this what you envisioned 5 or 10 years ago? I was like, oh, no way in hell. And he's like, exactly. Like, we literally have no, like, it's almost like we have, like, just no perception, or, like, most of, like, not really an actual perception of where we're going to be in the next 5, 10 years. Like, we have no idea.
You literally have to predict the future, and you can't do it. And that extrapolates to so many other facets of life. Like, for example, you have to, and we were talking about this at the beginning of the show, you're graduating high school, you're getting ready to graduate high school, and you need to make a decision as what you want to do with your career. You're not an adult. I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says. You're not an adult. Your brain has so much growing to do. I think every psychologist and therapist in the world would agree with this too. Like, it's crazy that we can even think that people who I think are children can make huge life decisions and be responsible for them at that age. But you got to make a decision, and you have to say, oh, wow, I've got to maybe go to college and start studying something that I have no idea if it's going to be lucrative. And it's like, that, you know, I don't want to criticize any particular major, but some are just clearly going to be more lucrative than others. Yeah. And if you don't come from a background where you're going to be able to make an informed decision, you can set yourself up for failure. But even so, you have to make a decision. Let's say you choose a career. I chose accounting. That to me seemed like a good choice at the time. I took some accounting classes in high school. It's decently lucrative coming out of college. I liked it. I think it was a good foundation for my career. I liked the finance. It's easier math. It's not like I have to do calculus. And Now I find myself not really loving accounting that much. I think it's great. I think it helped form who I am today, but now I want to see myself growing in different ways. So don't be afraid to make a decision. You're allowed to change your mind down the road when you have different data points. But that's the thing. I like being your own worst critic. Is that it's not fair. You can't predict the future, and you're allowed to make changes down the road. And you're not going to know where your career is. You start off, you're not going to know where your career goes. You might think you're going to be a professor one day, or you might think you're going to be CFO at a company, or maybe you end up a multi-millionaire, maybe 100-millionaire real estate investor. So you just don't know. But as long as you're always trying to grow, as long as you're working, you're self-reflecting, you believe in kind of that self-help, you have that self-help mentality. Like you're either reading books or listening to people or having these conversations where you're trying to work through your thoughts and be a better person tomorrow than you were today. That forward progress, I think, is all that's important. And that's what I say to myself. I said, I've made forward progress and I should be very proud of that. And maybe I want to make more forward progress, but hey, I've got hopefully many years ahead of me. So I don't think I hopefully need to worry. Nothing crazy is going to happen to me out there. So, in the last 2019 to 2022, I guess we're at 3 years now. And so I hope to accomplish way more in the last 3 years. But when I think about last year, I technically owned 3 units at the beginning of the year. And now I own individually 6 units with partners an additional 11 units. So I've more than doubled what I had from last year.
Yep.
And that's my new philosophy moving forward is every following year, I want to double the amount of units that I own from the previous year. And I haven't really done the math on that, but I think if I do that, I'll own like 1 trillion units by the time I'm 60 or some crazy number like that. So.
Yeah, man. No, I totally agree. And like, that's the thing too, man. It's like on the other side of the spectrum of like, kind of trying to figure out how to word it. Of like being your own worst critic, like when you finally like hit these things, like something that I struggle with is like, in the moment, like, yeah, like, you're super excited, like you just closed on that property, like everything's great. But then like, this is the part I'm trying to figure out is like, it's not really enough. And like I'm afraid to get like comfortable and be like, oh great, like we did it, like we can cruise a little bit, because like I don't want that, like I just want to focus on the next thing, and like it's tough to kind of like
Good thought. That's a good thought, because that is
you know
when you're outside looking in, you're
yeah
like, if that person's successful, like why do they need more? Why do they want more? Like it doesn't make sense. But when you're in the position, you take like a certain pride over what you've been able to build, and it just never
yeah
feels like it makes sense to stop building, because when you have that entrepreneurial mindset or that business owner mindset, like you see yourself creating value at the very least for yourself and for your family, but
yeah
beyond that, hopefully providing a useful product or service to the world, to your local community. And that's one of the things we see with real estate is we can provide quality housing, affordable housing, not always affordable, but at least quality housing, safe
yeah
housing to the community. And one of the strategies we use is finding those kind of dilapidated, rundown properties with deferred maintenance and going in there and trying to make them pretty again and make them like that we ourselves would be proud to live there.
yeah
And some people call it gentrifying, but at the end of the day, it's like quality housing. It costs money to create it. There's demand for it. It generally has a premium. You're going to pay a little bit more for it. But I think it's the responsible thing to do. And if you don't have those types of investors, you're not going to have a community that's seeing redevelopment and growth. So it's important that you have that. I think we're important parts of the ecosystem. And I think in a lot of ways, we're doing good for our communities. But we want to do bigger things too. I mean, I'd love to be able to develop something where we can also try to coordinate certain types of businesses that the city or town would like to see come into their community. And so those could be types of tenants that we look for when filling like retail or commercial space at the bottom. There's like a lot of ways that you can give back. Obviously, you can do it beyond real estate too. That's just one of the things. I discovered real estate. It's something I'm passionate about right now. But I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised. But I mean, in 10 years, I could be a business owner in a totally different industry. And who knows? You just don't know where life's going to take you. I think that's the beauty of it. It's a hell of a
it
ride.
is.
It's a journey.
It definitely is, Ben. I totally agree. So Ryan, I do want to ask you one question, man, that I like to ask everybody. How do you define wealth?
Ooh, there's a good question. How do you define wealth? All right. So one of the ways I would say is, okay, I think everybody probably assumes this. Like you hear somebody's wealthy, you think that they have a lot of money. And I think that is a component of it. Or I think what they really need to say is they're at a point in life where they don't need to worry about how they're going to live a decent lifestyle and come up with the money or run out of the money. So they're doing something where they're either getting continuous cash flow or large enough paychecks that they don't really need to worry about looking at their bank account every month and balancing the checkbook. It's like not a need. They know that they can go to the grocery store and really pay as much as they need to get food, that they can go out to eat a few times a week. You can go on vacations. You can buy a house every now and then. You can buy maybe some fun toys like a boat. That to me is a traditional sense of wealthy. That's also the type of opinion or definition that I take on. But beyond that, I also think that it's important. Like part of me being wealthy is being wealthy in time, in spare time. So like, what can I do with my free time that is going to provide joy in my life? Because working and making money isn't the only thing that provides joy. That's just one part of life that I think provides satisfaction. And it doesn't even do that for everybody. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, I don't think the thing that you're going to be saying is, I wish I had started another business. I think it's going to be, if anything, I wish I had spent more time with loved ones. I wish I spent more time with friends and family. I wish I had more flexibility in my daily schedule to do that. Or I wish I had a better legacy to leave. I'm leaving behind a better legacy for myself. And so these are the things to me that kind of all build up into wealth. And I'm trying to live by those principles like every day. Like even with Blue Canyon, I'm like, I want to develop a good brand now. I don't want to do anything that's slimy or scummy on the front end that could make it so that somebody down the road is going to have a grievance against me. And I'm trying to set myself up so that I'm not a workaholic, that I'm not working 6 or 7 days a week. Like I want to have time for my friends and family. And I'm okay stepping in when I think I see a friend or somebody that I really care about maybe not paying enough time or enough attention to those things in their private life, saying like, hey, like, maybe it's time to spend some more time with them. Relax, take a vacation. Like everybody wants to see their mom and dad, everybody wants to hang out with their friends and their family. But life gets the best of us sometimes. I think it's natural. You get overwhelmed. So that's wealth for me. Wealth is having the resources and the means necessary to live a fulfilling life. And that's what I'd say it is, fulfilling. And what's fulfilling to me? Fulfilling to me is being able to spend a good amount of my time the way that I want to, the way that's going to provide me with happiness and enjoyment, and surround myself with loved ones and be able to provide a positive impact in my loved ones' lives, not just financially, but financially helps a lot. I mean, I hope most people will admit it, that like having a lot of money definitely helps. Like being able to go out to eat and not have to worry about it, or being able to just say, you're having a really hard time, like, let me buy this for you. Or, I mean, that's something that first off, I should be doing this more. I think I'm at a point where I could be doing this more, but I know that this is things that I want to do forward, is like going out to just like a decent restaurant, especially around the holidays or something, just paying for, a family across the way. They don't even necessarily need it. And it's not to be, I don't want to be judgmental. I'm not being, or anything like that. I'm just saying like giving back to people who you think might appreciate having a free meal. Because it's never happened to me. I've never gone out to eat and be like, oh, this person or an anonymous person over there paid for your meal. Like, that'd be a good feeling, regardless of if I could afford it or not. That's a good feeling. And then I'd be inspired to pay it forward. I'd be like, oh, really? I'm sorry. Well, then I want to pay for that person's tab over there. And you hear stories like that on the news. So those are the things that I'd like to be able to do. That's wealth to me. I don't know
Love that, man.
I know you're the interviewer. And I'm the interviewee. But like, what's your definition of wealth? How do you like to think of that? Curious.
That's awesome, man. I do love that so much. Mine is actually it's pretty similar. For me, it's a pretty personal reason as well, of pretty much basically just being able to create enough passive income every month to tell my mom that she's able to retire and she doesn't have to work for her day job anymore, because usually we're miserable, and like it goes a lot deeper than that, but it's that's kind of the big one. You know what I mean? I'm like, we just, like, life's too short to be unhappy, man. And like, at the very least, like, if the financial aspect of that can be covered and we can, have our time back and like go to the beach if we want to. And like, I totally agree with you, man. It just goes so much deeper.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it would be a really nice kind of thank you, for
Absolutely. And I feel like that's almost every parent's dream, is to have your child be able to do things that you felt like you weren't able to do.
Yeah.
And so you can see them being able to give to you things that you might not have been able to have as a kid yourself, but now maybe in your older years, your children are able to provide that for you. And on top of that, they're able to provide something more to their children than you were able to provide to them. And not that that's a bad thing at all, but it's like constant growth, even in like the family structure. It's like always progressing as a society and as a family unit. So I think I like that too. I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
And I mean, definitely along with that, like it is a lot of fun, to just kind of like we were talking about earlier, just kind of like experiment with things and like try out different businesses and like it's definitely something that's extremely enjoyable. So
Yeah,
to be able to kind of do that and go out and like meet certain people and like start certain projects and partner on different things, like it just like the lesser aspect, I guess, of the bigger picture is definitely something like that. Just to literally like let your mind just open and run free and
hmm
like just like try anything you want, and like it say like one day you had an idea for like a kick-ass nonprofit or something. Be like, all right, man, like let's get like 5 people together, like let's do this, like let's see how much money we can raise. Like screw it, why not? Like I don't know, it seems like a lot of fun, and it's
I totally agree.
yeah,
Totally agree.
you know.
Absolutely, sir. I mean, I think that's where we all want to be. I mean, I don't know. Everybody maybe hasn't been there, but I think, and we all obviously come from different backgrounds. And so some people were just constantly, they were raised and constantly faced with the finance problem. Like you knew the finances in the family it wasn't going well. You knew that things struggled. You knew like
Yeah.
maybe as soon as you were able to work that you had to start working. And others, were more fortunate and didn't have it that way. But like either way, I think a lot of people learn that, yeah, they don't want to, especially if you come from a tougher background, you almost like commit yourself to, I really want to give my posterity and future generations within my family more. I want to give them more than I was able to have. And I think that's the least that we can do for our family. I think that's good for society when you're able to give more to your family. But I think
Yep.
it's also good for society when you're able to give more beyond your family.
Yeah.
Put yourself in a situation where you can help make the community a better place. So
Yep. I love it, man. I totally agree with you. You know. So I got one more question for you, Ryan. The question is, do you read, and what is your favorite business, investing, or real estate book that you would recommend to anyone, or podcast, or
never picked up a book in my
anything
entire
you,
life, sir. No, I
anything
know.
you consume ever?
So it's funny because I was thinking about this and it's tough because I think back. So first off, I don't really read anything other than real estate geared books, which is funny. Like I used to read some more stuff in the politics space sphere, and then obviously stuff in college and things that were required for school. But my favorite books. So I was thinking about this in case you asked it, and I think the two books that really had that resonated with me the most. The first one was Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate by Brian Murray. So
Ooh.
this is I don't have it with me, this particular book, but it's a black book with red text. And I want to say it was like the one of the earlier books, maybe within the first 5 books I read on real estate. And this one was talking about Brian's journey. I want to say he was a school teacher or something first, and then he bought his first apartment building. I could be totally getting all this wrong, so no offense, Brian Meyer. Sorry if you ever hear
I'm
this.
probably gonna read it anyway.
Yeah,
Now that you said
if
that.
you haven't read this, it's actually a phenomenal book. He buys this property that's really run down. I want to say it's somewhere in New York or Ohio. I can't remember, but really run down. There's drug deals going on in the building. There's people urinating in the elevators. There's like, it is totally gross. There's trash outside the sidewalk. And he buys this building and he turns it around within a few years. And like, not only creates extraordinary financial benefits for him, financial resources. He becomes, I think, pretty wealthy off this one transaction.
Hmm.
He improved a building that had tenants in there that were either couldn't afford a lot, but were not in a safe environment, or they were just in an unsafe environment and wanted to be there. Regardless, he improved his community. He improved that building. He made it so that he installed security cameras. He was there every single day picking up the trash outside the building. He was going through renovating the apartments. He was had a leasing office, I believe, on the inside. He was there every day interacting with the tenants, trying to get the shitty ones out and get the good guys in there. I shouldn't say the good guys, but the ones that the more desirable tenants that are going to be more respectful to everybody's personal space and stuff. And that resonated with me. And that was kind of like my first introduction to the commercial multifamily space. And then funny enough, the second book that I'd say is actually The Multifamily Millionaire. So Brandon Turner wrote these with Brian Murray, actually, same author from that other one that I talked about.
Yep.
I think Brian Murray ended up being a guest on one of the Biggerpockets podcasts with Brandon Turner. And so I guess they've been investing together for quite some time now. And they wrote a series of 2-volume books together and is crushing it in it called Crushing It? The Multifamily Millionaire. Uh, maybe I should not anything. I think I'm getting confused with the other title because the other title says something about crushing it, I believe. But anyway, the 2 volumes. I don't know what the first one's called, but the first one concentrates on residential, small multifamily stuff, so like more on the 1 to 4 unit space, and then this one talks about the larger stuff. So this is what's saying. Create generational wealth by investing in large multifamily real estate. And this is the type of stuff that I'm now working towards, because one of the things I've learned, and this is my big takeaway for this, once you understand the metrics that you need to use to analyze a smaller deal, once you understand how to operate a smaller deal, generally speaking, there's huge economies of scale by taking that same work and applying it to a larger project. It almost takes the same amount of time, or if it takes more time, it's like it might be a deal that's 20 times as large in terms of all the numbers, the cash flow that's going to produce in terms of the price, but it will only take like 50% more work to underwrite it. And that's crazy, especially when you're getting out of the space of it. There's unsavvy investors who are going in there and managing it themselves, in which case, like, it's harder to buy things at fair market value because people aren't factoring the fact that they have to hire a property management company. So if you're put in a situation where you have to buy it at a higher price and manage it yourself to make the numbers work, then it becomes harder to scale. With larger multifamily, it's assumed that you hire a property management company to run the building. And that in itself is just like, holy crap, you're not the one that has to take a phone call in the middle of the night when the toilet breaks or sprinkler's going off or a fire alarm's going off and the fire department's there. Those are like the worst calls. And everybody says that's why, or not everybody, but the people who are scared of real estate, those are the examples that they give. You only get yourself into that position if you design it, the infrastructure for owning the building, such that can happen to you. I think a smart real estate investor is going to think about ways that they can delegate work out and make it so that they can have that wealthy living mindset where they can have a fulfilling life, save that time for either building things that are meaningful to them, like their business, or spending time with family and friends. So yeah, those are the 2 books. So it's Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate by Brian Murray. And I don't know what year that came out. I want to say that came out in maybe, I don't know, a few years ago, 5 years ago, maybe. I don't totally know. And then this one's more recent. I think this came out just in 2021, I believe. Maybe 2022. I'm not fully sure when these got released, but this is a 2-volume series. So if you're a new investor, I highly recommend both of these books, the first volume and the second volume, because I think that'll give you a more well-rounded approach to real estate and investing and the like genres or categories of commercial real estate and real estate, so to speak. So that's my answer.
100%, man. I love it. The first book I haven't read. I've heard about it. I'll definitely check it out.
I recommend it. It's one of those books too where I think you'll be able to tell within the first couple of chapters if you think you're going to get value out of it or not. Yeah. And then, by the way, this is another thing I learned from a friend of mine. Don't be afraid to skip chapters in a book. Like, books are all about learning. So if you're finding something that's boring in the book, like, don't be afraid to skip through the book. Like, skim through that chapter and get to the section that's a little bit more for you. Because it's all about taking away something. If you're putting yourself through a mental roadblock every time you pick up that book and you start to get anxiety or just resentment toward the book, then you're not going to be able to get the benefits that might be later on in the book because you're just so afraid. You're like, I got to drudge through all this other crap. So don't be afraid to skim. You can always come back to it. I mean, it's not a big deal in the world, but skip it. There's nothing wrong with that. And don't be afraid to be the person that doesn't read the full book. I've done that before, and sometimes you just got to make that call and do it. So I was going to say to you is, pick up the book, start reading it. If you don't like it, skip around a little bit. And if you don't like it, it's not for you. Sorry. But I enjoyed the book. I think it's a good book.
That tip is huge, man. Because that's actually, I've never done something like that before. I've just tried to power through it, and I'm like, oh my god.
Exactly, that's what everybody does, because you're just ingrained. It's there's a beginning, there's an end, and I got to go through every single part of it. Because it's also, I think, you think in a fictional book, it's you're going to miss a story if you skip. But that's not the case with nonfiction or stuff like this. This is all about getting takeaways. Even if you just buy a book for 2 chapters. I've bought textbooks about real estate and real estate development where I didn't read the earlier chapters because it wasn't related to the type of development that I was interested in, and only read the stuff that was about commercial multifamily development. Because at that time, I was really strongly considering buying a property that was more of a development property, and adding on addition or knocking it down and rebuilding from scratch. So haven't done that yet. That's a goal for mine as well. Not this year, but probably next year is going to be buying some type of development deal, ground up development deal. I'd really like to do something like that.
That's genius, man. That's absolutely awesome.
But that's my tip. That's my tip on the skipping around. Don't be afraid to skip around, because it's all about getting the most benefit for the time that you're putting into it. So if you're putting in time to reading those really boring chapters, and it's taking a lot of time and you have to keep going back to read it, just skip it. Just skip it and come back to it later if you really want to.
That's genius, man. Seriously, like the next time that like I come up to a spot in a book and I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to do this.
One other quick recommendation: YouTube channel. It's called Commercial Property Advisors (CPA), and it's with what's the guy's name? Peter Harris, or is it Peter Conti? Let me look that up real quick. But it's Commercial Property Advisors, and he talks about on his YouTube channel very similar stuff as this stuff about how to analyze commercial multifamily real estate, how to make offers that are reflective of what their true value is on that day that you're purchasing it, and then how to boost its value and create wealth and generate income. So I think that's also a Commercial Property Advisors is also a great channel. And if you just look that up on YouTube, you'll find it. And the gentleman's name is Peter Harris. So I was so close to meeting this guy. I was so bummed out. He was on Lake Tahoe boating. I say I'm so close, but he was on Lake Tahoe boating like a week after I was there. Dang it.
You guys could have to coordinate next time, man.
I know. He's from San Francisco, and I've been dating somebody from the Bay Area from San Francisco. So it makes sense. So when I'm back out there, I might try to connect with him. He seems like a really chill guy. Like I could literally say, hey, you're super cool. I'd love to buy you lunch like this week if you have time. And he's like not like into the sphere of social media that like he's like, oh, I'm a big shot. I don't have time for this. Like I think he's the type of guy that's like he checks his email and checks every email. So if I can find his email, I'm sure he'd
I believe in you, man. You're gonna get that lunch with him. It's gonna happen.
Hey, one time I was hell bent on meeting Anderson Cooper when he was in Boston filming for CNN, and I was like, I'm gonna meet Anderson Cooper tonight. And I went out. Everybody doubted my ability to go like see him, talk to him, get a photo with him, and I did. I got it.
Yeah, so, let's go. That's awesome.
I'm 1-0 right now.
Wow, that's incredible, man. Thank you so much for coming on here, Ryan. That was
Kyle, thanks a ton for having me, man. It's been good. I feel like you and I have really gotten to know each other very well this year. I'm very honored, and it's truly a great pleasure being on here and talking about my experiences with you. And I hope, if not for at least some social media bite clips, that we can maybe provide some value to others that listen. So thank you for having me. It's been great.
100%. Thank you so much. Oh, one more thing, Ryan. Where on like social media can you and Blue Canyon?
Yeah, so Blue Canyon, we're still working through creating the website and creating the social media page. Blue Canyon Equity Partners does have a LinkedIn page right now, and that's where I'd highly recommend if you're interested in reaching out to us. Just type in Blue Canyon Equity Partners, spaces between all of those words on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to find our LinkedIn landing page. And then we're working on building out the website and social media. My personal social media is at Ryan R. Emrich, I believe, on Instagram.
Yep.
And on TikTok, Kyle.
Guys, you gotta check out this guy's TikToks. Like I'm telling him, they're gonna go viral because they're gonna go viral.
I hope one day. So on TikTok, I'm at Fly Rye Real Estate Guy. So her name's Ryan. So Fly Rye Real Estate. So FLYRY Real Estate Guy. I think you can probably just type in Ryan Emrich on TikTok and you'll find my profile as well. So I strongly advise you should like real estate content if you follow me, though, because I'm shoving real estate content down all of my followers' throats, even if they're friends of mine from high school. They're now getting real estate content whether they like it or not.
That's absolutely awesome. Yeah, I'm calling the shot right now. You're going to get a viral TikTok.
What do you define viral? Like, how many views do you think a viral TikTok is?
Literally, like one hit, like 1 million. Like straight up.
1 million?
Like, blows up, dude. Like out of nowhere. I've seen it happen to people around. Dude, like your videos are like so official and like Fly Rye the real estate guy. Dude, like come on. Like how's that not famous? Like for real.
I hope it does. At the very least, I hope it's something that is relatable to people just beyond real estate. Those are the types of videos that blow up, or like the ones that are not just applicable to real estate, but maybe a life lesson or something that applies beyond real estate. So, all right, thank you for pumping me up like that.
It's gonna happen.
Pumping me up to such heights. I will try to live up to those expectations. All right, new goal. If I get 1 million views on a TikTok, I'd like to be invited back for
100% deal.
All right, cool.
Let's do it. You guys heard it. Thank you so much again, Ryan.
Thanks, Kyle. This is a blast. I appreciate it, man.
I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Talk to you soon. Have a good one.
You too. All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.